Your coworkers think you're struggling, not in a dramatic way, not the kind of struggling that gets mentioned in a meeting or whispered about in the break room, just the quiet kind, the kind people assume from a 2015 Chevy Malibu with a cracked side mirror and a lunch you packed yourself in a reused Ziploc bag. So last Tuesday, while you were in a conference room reviewing a lease agreement for your fourth commercial property, 17 people at your company, people you have eaten lunch with, people you have covered shifts for, people whose kids' names you remember, those 17 people pooled together $2,400 on a GoFundMe titled Help Mark Get Back on His Feet. You found out at 6:14 p.m., sitting in your car in the parking garage, reading a text from Janet in accounting. You sat there for a long time, not because you were embarrassed, because you were genuinely moved, and because the number on your actual account statement, the one your financial advisor sent that same morning, was $1.2 billion. Level 1. The beginning. It didn't start with a plan. It started with a broken dryer. You were 26, renting a studio apartment in Columbus, Ohio. The dryer in your building had been out for 11 days. The landlord wasn't in a hurry, so you drove to a coin laundromat 3 blocks away, the kind with flickering lights and a vending machine that only accepted exact change. You sat there for an hour and 40 minutes, watching quarters disappear into machines, not annoyed, watching. You did the math in your head. 12 washers, 8 dryers, Saturday afternoon, every machine occupied. Average cycle, 35 minutes, at $3.50 per wash, $1.75 per dry cycle. You pulled out your phone and started typing numbers into the Notes app. You didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. Not because you had a vision, not because you had capital or a mentor or a business degree, because you had 45 quiet minutes and a brain that couldn't stop asking, who actually owns this machine? Level 2. The first move. It took you 6 weeks to find out who owned that laundromat. It took another 3 months to find a similar one for sale, a 12-machine operation in Dayton, Ohio. The owner was a 63-year-old former mail carrier named Gerald, who tracked everything in a spiral notebook and wanted out before his knees got worse. The asking price was $52,000. You had $19,000 in savings. You found a small business loan for the rest. The interest rate wasn't great, the machines were older than you would have liked, the bathroom needed work. The first month, it netted $2,800. Nobody congratulated you. You didn't post about it. You didn't tell your coworkers, who at that point knew you as the guy who always brought his lunch and drove the Malibu and said, "I'm good, just saving up," when people asked about vacations. You sat with the $2,800 on a Wednesday night and felt something that wasn't quite pride and wasn't quite enough, but you weren't looking at the $2,800. You were looking at what it proved. The machine ran without you. Gerald's notebook became your system, the quarters became direct deposit, and every dollar that came in while you were sitting at your desk at work, at the actual job nobody knew you didn't need, confirmed the same thing. The architecture worked. Level 3. The build. Over the next 4 years, you bought 3 more laundromats. Not because you were aggressive, because you were patient, and patient people in boring markets rarely have competition. You learned to read a lease the way other people read box scores. You knew what a CAM charge was and why it mattered. You knew the difference between gross revenue and what actually hit your account after utilities, attendant pay, and coin collection. You also learned that laundromats were just the beginning, because the same logic that made them work, essential service, low disruption risk, consistent human behavior regardless of economic conditions, applied to things most investors never bothered to look at. You bought 2 self-storage facilities, not glamorous, not the kind of thing you'd put on a dating profile, but Americans move constantly, downsize constantly, accumulate more than they can fit in their homes constantly. That need doesn't pause for recessions. It doesn't log off for the holidays. You acquired 3 highway billboard ground leases in Tennessee. You don't own the signs, you own the land underneath them. Advertising companies pay you every month for the right to stand on your dirt.
You forget you own them for weeks at a time. Then a deposit hits and you remember. Level 4, the GoFundMe. You called Janet back that evening. You thanked her. You told her it meant more than she knew, which was true in a way she couldn't possibly understand. You told her you'd been sorting some things out, but you were okay, which was also true in every sense except the literal one. She sounded relieved. You asked how her daughter's soccer season was going. She talked for 11 minutes. You listened. You did not tell her about the account statement. You will probably never tell her. Not because you don't trust her. You do. Because the moment you do, something changes in the room that can never be unchanged. Some people call that loneliness. You've made peace with a different word for it. You call it clarity. The clarity of knowing exactly what you have and choosing every day to live as if the number doesn't exist. Not because you're in denial, not because money doesn't matter, but because you watched what happened to other people the moment their wealth became visible, and you decided a long time ago that you were not going to let a number change the temperature of the rooms you lived in. Level 5, Climax. The GoFundMe closed 6 days later. $2,400, 17 donors. Janet organized it. Someone named Brian from the 3rd floor, a guy you barely know, gave $200. You donated $2,400 back, anonymously, to a children's hospital in the city. Then you requested a refund for the original campaign contributors, citing a change in circumstances, which Janet announced in a company-wide email with a relieved emoji. Nobody ever found out who made the donation. Nobody ever found out why the circumstances changed. And on a Thursday morning, while your coworkers were checking their refunds and moving on with their day, you were in a parking garage reviewing the site plan for a self-storage facility in Phoenix. The Malibu needed an oil change. You made a note to handle it over the weekend. The number on your account statement hadn't changed how you thought about the oil change. It never does. That is exactly the point.